Hello everyone, Autistic Pony here, and today we're going to start a new segment of my channel where I look beyond My Little Pony and into the world of autism, mostly in television and film. And I thought, with the final season of Parenthood just around the corner, I thought I'd take a chance to look at the show's autistic character, Max, and why I don't like him. Either no one cares, or I just need more of an audience. I'm going to go for the first one and hope for the best. Either way, do keep in mind at least, this is just my own opinion of the show and Max from an autistic person's point of view. And while I won't act like I don't have a lot of personal bias against Max and some of these autistic characters, I do. I'll try my best to be as fair as possible and try whenever I can to take the character more for what we are given rather than what I want it to be. Although, trust me, that's only going to hold for so much in these reviews. But enough about that. With all that out of the way, let's take a look at the show Parenthood and Max.
May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others, and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars, climb on every run, and may you stay forever young.
A slice-of-life drama on primetime NBC, the show Parenthood is about four siblings who are living a middle-class American lives while learning what it means to be parents. And yeah, for the most part, that's about it. Oh, and one of their kids is autistic. So basically, when you get down to it, Max is really the show's biggest selling point. Now, don't get me wrong, there is of course more to it than that, but for the most part, if it wasn't for Max having Asperger's syndrome, then I highly doubt my dad and I would have ever given the show a chance. And to someone like my dad, a person who has raised an autistic child, his opinion of the show is that it's one of the best written shows on television. As for me, as of right now, as a person living with Asperger's syndrome, well, I don't think the show is terrible. It's far from being one of my favorite shows. I'll say my final verdict for my Parenthood review as a whole at the end of the season, but to sum up the problems with the show I have, it often has more mediocre stories than good ones. The dialogue is insufferable.
If he saw anything or so yeah.
So you and Lauren are you...
My dad's defense is how people really talk, but I see it more as annoying. It also takes itself way too seriously at its time. The characters, while complex, I guess have some good backstories and arcs and whatnot. They themselves aren't very interesting. And if you're totally not invested in the show, you can easily forget who's who. And of course, I dislike Max.
But, whatever you want to do is fine.
In fact, the more I thought about it, I dislike a lot of autistic characters in fiction. Why? Well, first off, for those of you who don't remember my first video, I came up with the term open and closed autistic characters. Closed autistic characters, like Twilight Sparkle, are characters who might have some form of autism, while open autistic characters are where the story states they have autism. Now, if you want to know what I think of closed autistic characters more, you can check out my Is Twilight Autistic episode, and I do plan to do another video on them in the future. For now, let me just point out my opinion on open autistic characters like Max, which I also have hinted at in my first video that I have some issue with. What issues might those be? Well, to put it bluntly, I think many of these autistic characters are very unlikable, and very few, which is a shame because I think there's a lot of good potential for great autistic characters. They have the right ideas with Sheldon from The Big Bang, and if you want to technically consider Forrest Gump as an open autistic character, you can see the possibilities. Yet at the end of the day, there are still very few of them in fiction, and as I said, most of them seem to be very unlikable, and with traits that don't make you want to root for them in the end. Now, I don't have a problem with having unlikable qualities in characters. All great characters need flaws. It's why I love shows so much like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Looney Tunes, and MLPs. I'm not criticizing open autistic characters such as Max for having unlikable qualities. I'm criticizing them that this is all they seem to have. Well, when they're nothing more than a background or an obstacle for the family to deal with. Now, before we go on, I think I need to ask, Why is this the case with so many open autistic characters in fiction? And why are there so few of them? In fact, when I asked a few of my other autistic friends, they had very few good open autistic characters to compare with. So why is this the case? Why do we have so few good autistic characters in Medium, and why do they turn out so unlikable and few? Well, I guess the best theory I can come up with for this is a lot of writers are afraid of writing autistic characters. Basically, when you write any character with some form of disability, you'll have to worry about three fronts in critiquing. The first is the usual front of people who don't like your story for whatever reason, and this goes with any story, even the great ones. Then there is the front from the more scientific community. The people who criticize a movie such as Twister and The Day After Tomorrow more for being scientifically inaccurate instead of it just being a bad movie. Same goes with autism. Although the worst front you have to deal with are the families of autism. Those who will make a fuss and a scene if you make your autistic character unrealistic. Sure would help if I could use air quotes here. Anyways, with this front, a writer making an autistic character will have the constant fear of being told, your autistic characters are too normal, they don't act that nice, or this and that. And as a result, whenever a writer is presented with an autistic character, they will tend to focus more on the flaws that make them believable, rather than any qualities that would make them likable or redeemable. It also doesn't help when a writer thinks they're autistic, whatever they do will be fine because they have autistic issues. And while this might not be the case everywhere, and if you want to see somewhat what I'm talking about, watch the movie Incredibly Loud and Incredibly Close. I'll do a full review on this one day, but this is a much shorter, if not less painful, experiencing through 6 seasons of Parenthood. Still, because of this, many autistic characters come across as irredeemable rather than good characters. And it really turns me off when writers do this. Focus more on what they believe will please audiences rather than making their stories and characters likable. Kind of like many NLP fictions I've read, where a writer is more concerned on what will make their story more canon with the series rather than making the story and characters fit and flow better within their own narrative. Not to say that you should throw realism out their window, far from it. I've kind of had to learn this the hard way myself. No, you should try to make your story and characters as realistic as you can help it, but at the end of the day, it's your fiction. You're allowed to tweak whatever you need to make your story fit and flow better. Speaking of, remember that word, well written, as I get more into Parenthood and Max. Now, looking back to Max, he pretty much fits the description I just covered to a T, where he's so unlikable at times, with few, if any, redeeming qualities that he wouldn't stand out very strong on his own if he didn't have Asperger's syndrome. He is only meant to represent an autistic child from a parent's point of view, and shows the challenges one faces with raising such a child. And now, to the show's defense, with that being their intention, they do pull this off rather nicely in the first few seasons. And I'd be a liar and a hypocrite. I said hypocrite. Hypocrite? Oh, forget it. I'd be a something if I said I didn't see a lot of myself in Max as well. And for the early seasons, while he's still young and didn't know he had autism, this worked out well. He didn't know any better, and the story was just getting started. He was a character that had a lot of flaws. But with that being said, all those flaws did lead to a lot of potential for growth and possibly even a great character coming out of it. Kind of like a certain lavender unicorn from a pastel-colored pony show. However, as the show progressed, and he learned that he did have autism, and started to get his own storylines, while he never got worse or offensive, he grew after he found that he was autistic, I'll give him that. But to me, that's where the growth stopped, at least as a character. Sure, he certainly acted more mature than when the show started, but by that I mean he seems to have only grown from a troubled child to a person who could survive in the real world. If that makes any sense. Let me put it another way using MLP. Let's say with Pinkie Pie, she started out as nothing but an annoying as hell character, with no regards for her action, and whose only redeeming quality would be that she knew how to throw parties, and could be funny at times. Now, let's say, instead of her maturing in a way throughout the show that would make her a better character with a lot of great personality, and who did care about the feelings of others. All she did was mature into a pony that had the ability to sustain herself on her own, and nothing else. What if, say, at the end of the episode Baby Cakes, instead of Pinkie Pie maturing and growing into a better pony who learned the difficulties of responsibility and false sitting, all she learned by the end of the episode was how to false sit. And as a character, she didn't change at all besides that. Well, replace that trait of being funny with being smart, and you have Max and a lot of other open autistic characters. Another thing about these autistic characters, most writers think, is that you can just get away with your autistic character being smart as their only redeemable quality. No, no, no you can't. Looking back at my first video, I mentioned that Twilight Sparkle would make an excellent autistic character because she does have many of the flaws that are associated with autism, yet she is also a character that is willing to grow and does so throughout the show. She isn't some obstacles for other characters to get around or help, and she can stand strongly on her own. With Max, on the other hand, we don't have any of this. And while this might be fine for the parents watching, for someone like me with autism, this can be really frustrating to see, seeing a character grow in no other way other than just be something that can survive and prove nothing more than conflict for the parents. In fact, since I'm here, how about we make a list? A list of, if you're going to make an autistic character, follow these instructions to make a good autistic character. Step 1. Make sure your autistic characters have some redeemable quality. Again, in MLP, if all we had were characters with flaws, we wouldn't want to root for them or watch the show. They need to have at least some traits that make them likable as well as flawed, because if all Rainbow Dash ever did was be a cocky and full of herself mare, she would be really unlikable. Instead, while she does have these flaws, she also has a lot of positive qualities to her. She's loyal to her friends, and is even willing to put aside some of her dreams just from time to time just to help them and be a good person. Step 2. Don't make your only redeemable quality they are smart or funny. If this is the case, then they rarely are. Looking at me more towards an example than anything I know in fiction, I was a troubled child and very dissocial. I had very few friends. I was more interested in playing video games and reading books than interacting with other children. However, I was, to some effect, at least still conscious and self-aware of this. I didn't try to be mean-spirited. I did try to do the right thing, and if I ever felt like something I did was wrong or I hurt someone, I would at least try to make it better even if I failed. And while I didn't like hanging out with other kids, I at least wanted to. And step 3. Your autistic character must grow and be different in the end than when they were in the beginning. Now, for this, you don't need to make your autistic character normal by the end. In fact, I would call any story with that kind of ending mediocre at best. However, your autistic character must be better off by the end than when they started. Again, you don't need to make your character perfect, but you do need something to give the audience for all the time and energy they invested into your story. You want them to go, "Oh, I'm so glad things turned out so well for him or her." And if you want your story to be great, you need the majority of your audience to say, "Wow, I want to be like that person." Now, to be honest, I don't honestly remember every single episode of Parenthood I see, and I haven't had the time with such short notice to rewatch every single episode of Parenthood. I'll try my best before the final verdict at the end of the series. But from what I remember, Max, for the most part, doesn't fit any of these qualities necessary for a good autistic character. His only redeemable qualities is he's smart and occasionally, and unintentionally, funny. More mature than when he started, sure, but he's not an interesting character that undergoes a lot of character changes and just proves to be more of a conflict for the parents rather than his own character. I think the biggest change came from the plotline where he learned that he did have autism, and while he did seem to mature more afterwards, we rarely got to see anything else out of him after that. Then, whenever he does have his own story to take part in, he's more of an obstacle for the family to overcome rather than a character with own personalities. And even when that's not the case, the stories are, well, let's take the subline where he ran for class president, shall we? Because as far as I know, that's the most famous example I can think of his own storyline. When I first heard about this subplot, I was really excited and actually rather hopeful. It actually started out pretty well and with a lot of potential for showing the dangers of obsession versus finding your own goals. Max is presented with a problem. They have taken away the vending machines from the school, and he's upset about it. So much so that he begins to push his only friends away in the process as he decides he's going to do whatever it takes to become class president and get the vending machines back. And at first, I was like, yes! So many things they can do with this. So many ways we can finally get some good character out of Max and have them develop. Yet as the storyline went along, we didn't really get much. Sure, he grew increasingly obsessive with his campaign, but we never really saw any consequences out of it. No choice and conflict between his goal and friends or anything significant. It just sort of came and went. Admittedly, not the worst way they could have made him win, and the scene was well executed for what it was worth. I'll give him that. It just probably wasn't the best way it could have been done or written, in my opinion. I'm looking to you fans, Dad, who says this is the best written series ever. Yeah, speaking of all this show's brilliant writing you may or may not have heard of being praised for, how do you think this Max storyline ended? It's time for How to Write! Brought to you by Bronies. Bronies, making the world a better place each and every day. Buy more MOP toys! Alright audience, here's your situation. After Max becomes class president, he learns that he really has no power over getting the vending machines back. You know, the one reason he went through so much trouble in becoming president in the first place? Well, sucks and all. So, what are you, as one of the brilliant writers on this show, gonna do about it? Will you A, make Max get knocked down, but after he gets back up he uses his smarts, his only redeemable quality, to find a way to complete his goals? Or, how about B, Max tries again and again to get the vending machines back, only to fail again and again, but through that failure, learns a valuable life lesson that some things in life aren't going to work out or seem fair, but it's how you deal with it that matters in the end. Or, how about C, make his mom think that the school is being unfair, so she gets the vending machines back all by herself, making Max a school hero for doing absolutely nothing. Well, congratulations! If you picked C, then that means you've learned the valuable life lesson that whenever something doesn't go your way or work, you just throw a fit about it and your mom and dad will take care of everything for you. You do catch my sarcasm, right? I mean, it'd be fine if his mom wanted to help him, or was even the one who gave him the right words of encouragement at the end. But no, this is really how this episode's storyline ended, where she pretty much just did everything for him. And even if you want to use an excuse of, this show is meant for the parents rather than for the kids, let's take a moment and think about this, and say, what is this storyline teaching the parents? It's teaching the parents that, if your kids think something is unfair, you should just do everything for them, and they'll become better out of it. Now, maybe I wouldn't be too hard on this story, if it wasn't for the fact that it was supposed to be a Max-centered story. He was the one who was supposed to develop and grow out of this story, and come out better at the end. Instead, he's just the same as before, if not a little more cocky out of it for almost doing nothing. So yeah, excuse me if I do have some problems with this series. While I don't actually hate Max or Parenthood as much as I might be making it out to be, I still think Max is one of the worst examples of how to write an autistic character out there. While he's not insulting by any means, there is nothing particularly about him that makes you want to root for him, or see him succeed. If anything, the only reason I'm sure fans of the show would want to see him succeed is more because they want to see the parents succeed in raising him. Hey, you never know. The show's got one season left. Maybe this will be the season where Max shines and becomes one of the greatest autistic characters of all time. I have just about as much hope that Flash Sentry will become more than just a character's boyfriend at the end of Rainbow Rocks, but who am I to say? Like I said, I'll give the show a benefit of the doubt and give a final report on Max and the season as a whole after the final episode. Until then, I'm going to take a little break to go out and find Equestria Daily, or something that can help me teach me how to animate my body. Might be gone for a while, but hopefully by the time I get back, you'll be able to see me move around and do cool and comedic poses. Until then, I'm the Autistic Pony, saying it so you don't have to.